Captain Jake Morrison sat in the hard metal chair and tried not to feel small. Around him, the great hall of the Galactic Council stretched up so high he could barely see the ceiling. Thousands of alien beings filled the seats, their strange forms glowing under the bright lights. Some looked like giant insects with wings that sparkled like diamonds. Others were made of what seemed like living crystal that changed colors as they moved. A few appeared to be machines with glowing red eyes that never blinked. Jake looked down at his simple blue uniform and felt out of place. Next to him sat Dr. Lisa Park, a small woman with short black hair who kept checking her tablet. On his other side, Commander Ryan Cole shifted in his seat, his jaw tight with anger. All three humans wore the same expression. They knew they did not belong here. The announcer, a tall blue creature with 4 arms, called out in a voice that echoed through the hall. Next, we will hear from the Zephyrian Empire and their latest achievement in faster-than-light travel. Lord Krex rose from his seat like a mountain of silver metal. His voice boomed across the hall without any need for speakers. Fellow council members, we present our newest ship design. It can travel 50 times faster than light itself. Watch and be amazed. A huge screen appeared in the air above them. It showed a ship that looked like a silver needle shooting through space. Stars blurred past it like streaks of light. The ship moved so fast it seemed to bend reality around it. The crowd made sounds of wonder and approval. Jake had to admit it was impressive. Humans had only just figured out how to travel twice the speed of light, and that took their biggest ships months to cross even short distances. "Thank you, Lord Krex," said the announcer. "Next, the Crystal Collective will show us their matter conversion technology." A being that looked like a walking diamond stepped forward. It held up what appeared to be a rock, then pointed a device at it. The rock began to glow, and then dissolved into pure energy that danced in the air like tiny lightning bolts. The energy reformed into a perfect sphere of metal. "We can change any matter into any other matter," the crystal being said in a voice like wind chimes. "Rock to metal, metal to food, food to fuel. Nothing is impossible for us now." More sounds of amazement filled the hall. Jake felt his heart sink lower. How could humans compete with beings who could change the very building blocks of reality, the D? Presentations continued for hours. The synthoids showed machines that could think faster than any living brain. The Voidwalkers demonstrated how they could make their ships invisible to all sensors. Each display was more amazing than the last. Finally, the announcer called out, "Last, we will hear from Earth." The way it said Earth made it sound like a joke. Laughter rippled through the hall. Not cruel laughter, but the kind adults made when a child tried to show them a drawing. It was worse than being mocked. Jake stood up slowly. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to walk to the center of the hall. The huge room fell quiet, but he could feel thousands of eyes watching him. Most of them seemed amused. "Honored council members," Jake began, his voice sounding tiny in the vast space. "Humans have developed something we call multidimensional navigation. We would like to show you." "Multidimensional navigation?" Lord Krex's voice cut through Jake's words, like a sword. "Young human, we have studied dimensions for 10,000 years. There are only 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. What you speak of is impossible." More laughter filled the hall. This time it was louder and less kind. Admiral Voss, a being that looked like a giant octopus covered in armor, spoke up. "Humans have barely learned to split atoms. What could they possibly teach us about the nature of reality?" The crystal being chimed in, its voice like breaking glass. "Perhaps they have discovered how to fold paper and think it relates to space itself." The laughter grew even louder. Jake felt his face turn red, but he tried again. "If you would just let us demonstrate." "Enough," said Council Leader Thyra, a creature so ancient and strange that Jake could not tell what it was supposed to be. It seemed to be made of shadow and starlight at the same time. "Human, your species means well, but you must understand your place. You have been spacefaring for less than 100 years. We have been exploring the galaxy for millions of years. Some of us," added Lord Krex, with what might have been a smile, "were already ancient when your son was young." Thyra continued, If you truly believe you have discovered something new, you may present it at our next gathering. That will be in 100 years. Assuming, of course, that your species survives that long. The dismissal hit Jake like a physical blow. Around him, the alien beings were already turning away, losing interest in the humans completely. To them, Jake and his team were like children who had wandered into a meeting of grown-ups. Jake walked back to his seat on unsteady legs. Dr. Park put her hand on his arm, her touch gentle but her eyes burning with anger. Commander Cole's hands were clenched into fists so tight his knuckles had turned white. "Captain," Lisa whispered, "they have no idea what they just did." Ryan leaned close and spoke in a voice only they could hear. "Should we tell them about the horizon's edge?" Jake looked around at the thousands of alien beings who had just laughed at humanity's greatest achievement. He thought about the ship waiting in Earth's orbit, about the impossible technology they had developed in secret, about the tests that had shown results even the scientists could not believe. "No," Jake said quietly. "Let them find out on their own." As the three humans left the Great Hall, none of the aliens paid them any attention. They were already discussing the next item on their agenda, having forgotten about Earth entirely. But Jake Morrison carried with him the memory of their laughter. Soon, very soon, that laughter would stop. Dr. Alan Cross stared at the numbers on his screen and shook his head in disbelief. Even after 3 years of testing, the results still seemed impossible. He rubbed his tired eyes and looked around the underground laboratory that had become his second home. The Dimensional Research Facility was buried deep under the Nevada desert, far from any curious eyes. The government had built it in secret after Dr. Cross and his team had made their first breakthrough. Now, 50 of the world's smartest people worked here, trying to understand something that should not exist. "Alan, you need to see this," called Dr. Nina Walsh from across the room. She was hunched over a computer terminal, her red hair falling across her face as she typed. Nina was the best mathematician Alan had ever met, and right now she looked excited and scared at the same time. Alan walked over to her station. On her screen were equations that hurt to look at. They seemed to twist and turn even when he tried to focus on them. "The final calculations are done," Nina said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It works, Alan. It actually works." "Show me," Alan said, pulling up a chair next to her. Nina pointed to the screen. "Look at this. Every other species in the galaxy thinks in straight lines. They see space as having 3 directions, up and down, left and right, forward and backward. They can bend space, sure, but they always think of it as bending in those same 3 directions." She pulled up another screen showing a simple cube. "This is how they see a dimension. Clean, logical, mathematical. They build their ships to punch through space in straight lines even when they fold space to make the trip shorter." "And we see it differently?" Alan asked, though he already knew the answer. "We see it like this," Nina said, and the cube on the screen suddenly twisted into something that looked like a pretzel made of light. Humans have always been good at seeing patterns that should not exist. We look at clouds and see faces. We look at stars and see pictures. Our brains are wired to find connections everywhere. Alan nodded. It was true. When other species had developed space travel, they had done it through pure logic and mathematics. They had calculated every possibility and chosen the most efficient path. Humans had done something different. They had guessed, made wild leaps, and somehow stumbled onto something that worked. The breakthrough came when you realized that consciousness itself might exist in more than 3 dimensions. Nina continued. "Remember what you said 2 years ago, that maybe our minds do not just think about space. Maybe they actually touch it." Alan remembered that day clearly. He had been frustrated trying to understand why human test pilots could navigate dimensional folds that computer programs could not even map. In a moment of desperation, he had suggested something that sounded crazy. What if human intuition was actually a form of dimensional sense? "The tests proved it," Nina said, excitement creeping into her voice. "Human brains, with all their chaos and random connections, can interface with dimensional barriers. We can feel our way through folded space like a blind person feeling their way through a maze." She brought up video footage from their latest test. It showed Captain Morrison's ship, the Horizon's Edge, disappearing from normal space and reappearing thousands of miles away in the blink of an eye. Other species optimize their minds for pure logic, Nina explained. They make their thinking as clean and efficient as possible. But humans never did that. We kept all the messy, chaotic parts of our brains, the parts that dream, that imagine, that see things that are not there. And those messy parts can see dimensions that logic cannot, Alan finished. Exactly. While aliens perfected three-dimensional thinking, we stumbled onto multidimensional intuition. A new voice joined the conversation. The engineering side is ready too. Alan turned to see Bobby Martinez, the chief engineer for the project. Bobby was a big man with oil-stained hands who could fix anything ever built. More importantly, he understood how to build things that had never existed before. The dimensional core is installed and running perfectly, Bobby said. The consciousness interface systems are calibrated for human neural patterns. Captain Morrison has been training with navigator Helen Barnes for months now. How does it feel to them? Nina asked. When they navigate through folded space? Bobby grinned. Morrison says it feels like swimming through thick water, but the water is made of mathematics. Barnes says it's like being inside a music box where the music has color and the colors have texture. Alan laughed despite himself. Those descriptions made no logical sense, but somehow he understood exactly what they meant. That was the human gift, the ability to understand things that could not be explained. The aliens will never figure this out, Bobby continued. They think too cleanly. When they try to navigate folded space, they use computers and precise calculations. But you cannot calculate your way through a maze while you are inside it. You have to feel it. Nina pulled up another screen showing brain scans from human test subjects. Look at this. When humans navigate through dimensional folds, their brains light up in patterns we have never seen before. The logical parts go quiet, and the creative parts take over. The parts we use for dreams, for music, for seeing faces in clouds. It's like the difference between reading a map and dancing, Alan said. Aliens read maps of space. Humans dance through it. That's why Captain Morrison and his team are so important, Bobby added. They are not just pilots. They are the first humans to learn how to dance with dimensions. Alan looked around the laboratory at all the impossible technology they had built. None of it looked like the clean, elegant machines that aliens used. Human technology was messy, chaotic, held together with intuition and hope, but it worked in ways that pure logic never could. Are they ready for a real test? Alan asked. Morrison thinks so, Bobby replied. The Horizon's Edge is fully equipped. They have been running simulations for months. But Alan, if they try this, for real, and something goes wrong? I know, Alan said quietly. They could be lost forever in folded space. Or they could tear a hole in reality itself. Nina looked up from her computer. Or they could prove that humans belong in the galaxy, after all. The three scientists stood in silence for a moment, thinking about what they had built together. Somewhere above them, Captain Morrison and his crew were preparing for a journey that would either make humanity a major power in the galaxy or destroy them completely. The funny thing is, Alan said finally, we almost discovered this by accident. We were trying to build a better faster-than-light drive, and instead we found out that space has more dimensions than anyone realized. Not anyone, Nina corrected. The aliens realized it long ago. They just could not figure out how to use it. They were too logical, too precise. They needed the human gift for controlled chaos. Bobby checked his watch. Morrison's ship launches tomorrow for the final test. If it works, they will be able to cross the galaxy in hours instead of years. And if the Galactic Council laughs at us again? Alan asked. Nina smiled, but it was not a kind smile. Then they will learn that sometimes the most primitive approach is actually the most advanced. The emergency signal came through just as the Galactic Council was ending their weekly meeting. Council leader Thyra was about to dismiss the assembly when Admiral Voss's communication device began flashing bright red. The octopus-like beings' tentacles moved quickly over the controls, and suddenly the desperate voice of a human filled the great hall. This is Commander Steve Harper at Kepler Station. We are under attack by unknown forces. Repeat, we are under attack. They came out of nowhere. Ships that seem to phase in and out of reality. Our weapons pass right through them. They are demanding immediate surrender. The transmission crackled with static and fear. We have maybe an hour before they break through. Our shields. These things. They are not like anything in the database. They seem to feed on energy itself. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. The signal cut to static, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Lord Krex was the first to speak. Where is this Kepler station? Admiral Voss checked his charts. It is a small human outpost on the edge of our territory, very remote. The nearest council fleet would take 3 months to reach it even at maximum speed. 3 months? Thyra's voice echoed strangely in the vast chamber. By then, whatever attacked them will be long gone, the crystal being chimed softly. Perhaps this is natural selection at work. Weak species cannot expect others to protect them when they build stations in dangerous areas. But what kind of enemy can phase through solid matter? Asked a delegate. That looked like a walking tree. That is supposed to be impossible. Admiral Voss brought up the sensor readings from the edge of council space. What he saw made his armored skin turn pale. Council members, we are detecting massive energy signatures, moving inward from the outer rim. Whatever attacked the human station is not stopping there. Thyra studied the readings with growing alarm. These energy patterns. I have seen something like this before. In the ancient records. Computer, search historical files for devourers. A new voice filled the chamber, cold and mechanical. The devourers were an ancient species that consumed the life force of other beings. According to legend, they existed partially outside normal space-time. They were supposedly destroyed 50,000 years ago. Legends, scoffed Lord Krex. Old stories to frighten younglings. No, Thyra said, her voice filled with an emotion the council had never heard from her before. Fear. Not legends. I was there when we fought them the first time. It took the combined fleets of 100 species to drive them into deep sleep. If they have awakened, the chamber erupted in worried voices as delegates realized what this meant. The Devourers were not just another hostile species. They were a force of nature, something that had nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy once before. Far away on Earth, Captain Morrison was sitting in his quarters aboard the Horizon's Edge when the same emergency signal reached him. Unlike the Council, he did not have to debate what to do. He grabbed his communicator and called the bridge. This is Morrison. All crew to battle stations. We are going to attempt a rescue mission. Dr. Lisa Park's voice came back immediately. Captain, that station is 3 months away by the time we get there. We are not taking 3 months, Morrison cut her off. We are taking the dimensional route. Silence filled the communication channel. Everyone knew what that meant. They would be the first humans to use their new technology in a real emergency, not just a test. If something went wrong, they could be lost forever in folded space. Commander Ryan Cole's voice came over the comm. Captain, Earth Command has not authorized. Earth Command does not need to know until after we get back, Morrison said firmly. Those are our people out there. We are not leaving them to die. Within an hour, the Horizon's Edge was ready to depart. Navigator Helen Barnes sat in her special chair, cables connecting her mind directly to the ship's dimensional systems. The sensation was strange and wonderful. She could feel space itself like a vast ocean around them, with currents and tides that normal sensors could not detect. Are you ready, Helen? Morrison asked. Helen closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, feeling for the fold in space that would take them to Kepler Station. I can see the path, Captain. It feels dangerous. There are things moving in the dimensional currents, things that should not be there. The Devourers? Maybe. Or maybe something worse. Helen's voice was strained with concentration. Captain, whatever attacked that station, they used dimensional technology too. We might be flying into a trap. Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. Dr. Park was monitoring the ship's systems. Bobby Martinez was ready to push the engines beyond their safe limits if needed. All of them were volunteers, all of them knew the risks. "Do we go anyway?" Morrison asked. Every person on the bridge nodded without hesitation. "Then take us through," Morrison ordered. Helen Barnes opened her mind to the dimensional currents and guided the horizon's edge into folded space. The ship vanished from normal reality, leaving only a brief ripple to show it had ever been there. Back at the Galactic Council, Admiral Voss was coordinating the emergency response. 3 separate fleets were racing toward the outer rim, but all of them would arrive too late. The Devourers were already moving toward the populated core worlds, consuming everything in their path. "How many people were on that human station?" asked the tree-like delegate. "Only about 500, Voss replied. "A small research outpost studying cosmic radiation." "Such a waste," the crystal being chimed sadly. "But perhaps their sacrifice will warn us of what is coming." Thyra said nothing, but privately she was thinking about the old wars. The Devourers were not just killers, they were destroyers of hope itself. They fed on the life force of thinking beings, growing stronger with each world they consumed. And now they were awake again, in a galaxy that had forgotten how to fight them. On the edge of space, the Devourer fleet continued its advance. Their ships were things of nightmare, organic vessels that seemed to be made of living shadow and hunger. They moved through space like sharks through water, graceful and deadly. But they were not the only ones moving through the void. Somewhere in the folded dimensions between reality and dream, a small human ship was racing to reach Kepler Station. Navigator Barnes guided them through currents of twisted space-time, following paths that existed only in the chaos of human intuition. "How much longer?" Morrison asked. "Almost there," Helen replied, sweat beading on her forehead from the mental strain. "Captain, I can sense the station. It is still there, but barely. And the things attacking it, they are huge. Much bigger than anything in our databases. Can we fight them?" Helen was quiet for a long moment, reaching out with her mind to touch the edges of the enemy fleet. What she sensed there made her shudder. "Captain, these things do not just exist in normal space. They are spread across multiple dimensions. Fighting them will be like trying to hit smoke with a sword." "But we have dimensional technology too," Dr. Park pointed out. "Yes," Helen said slowly. "We do, and that might just make all the difference." The horizon's edge prepared to emerge from folded space near Kepler Station, where 500 humans were making their last stand against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. Captain Morrison and his crew had no idea that they were about to face the most dangerous foe in galactic history. They only knew that fellow humans needed help, and that was enough. Space around Kepler Station looked like a nightmare come to life. The small human outpost hung in the void like a broken toy, its shields flickering weakly under constant attack. Around it swarmed ships that seemed to be made of living darkness, organic vessels that pulsed with hungry light and moved like predators circling wounded prey. Admiral Voss watched the scene through his fleet's long-range sensors and felt a chill run through his armored body. The Galactic Council fleet had arrived exactly 3 months after receiving the distress call, just as calculated. But they were far too late. "Status report," Voss commanded. "The station appears to be destroyed," his tactical officer reported. "We are detecting no life signs. The attacking vessels match descriptions of Devourer bioships from the ancient records." Lord Crex's massive form appeared on the communication screen. His silver face showed what might have been sadness. "So the humans are gone. They fought, bravely, but they were simply too primitive to face such an enemy." The crystal being's voice chimed across the fleet channel. "Perhaps it is better this way. A quick death is more merciful than what the Devourers usually do to their victims." Thyra's ancient voice cut through the discussion. "Count the enemy ships. How many are there now compared to when they first attacked?" The tactical officers. Readings sent ice through every council member's heart. 60 bioships initially attacked the station. We now count over 200. They have been feeding. The horrible truth hit them all at once. The Devourers had not just killed the humans at Kepler Station. They had consumed their life force and used it to breed more ships. 500 dead humans had become 140 new nightmare vessels. They are moving toward the core worlds, Voss reported grimly. At their current speed, they will reach the first populated system in 2 weeks. We need to evacuate the outer colonies, Lord Krex said. Get everyone away from their path until we can figure out how to fight them. Fight them with what? The tree-like delegate asked over the communication channel. Our weapons pass through them like they are made of smoke. Our shields cannot stop their energy drain. How do you kill something that exists in multiple dimensions? If hearing their conversation, the Devourer fleet began to move. The bioships turned their attention to the Council fleet, and space around them began to twist in impossible ways. Reality itself seemed to bend as the ancient predators prepared to feed again. Then something happened that made every sensor on every ship scream warnings at once. Space tore open like fabric being ripped apart, not the clean fold of hyperspace or the calculated tunnel of an FTL jump, but a jagged wound in reality itself. Through that wound came a ship that should not exist. The Horizon's Edge burst into normal space exactly 47 minutes after Captain Morrison had received the original distress call. Impossible. The trip from Earth should have taken 3 months, not 47 minutes. Yet there it was. A small human vessel that had somehow crossed impossible distances in impossible time. This is Captain Morrison to all Council vessels, came a voice over the communication channels. We received your distress call. Sorry we are late. We had to stop for coffee. Admiral Voss stared at his sensors in disbelief. Human vessel, how did you get here? Our calculations show you departed from Earth less than an hour ago. Trade secret, Morrison replied, and there was something in his voice that sounded almost amused. But don't worry about that right now. You might want to back your ships away from those bioships. This could get messy. Captain Morrison, Lord. Krex's voice boomed across the fleet channel. You are badly outnumbered. That small ship cannot possibly fight 200 Devourer vessels. 203, Dr. Park's voice corrected from the Horizon's Edge. And you are right, we cannot fight them. But we are not planning to fight them in normal space. The Devourer fleet had spotted the human ship and were already moving to attack. Their bioships launched weapons that were not quite energy and not quite matter, things that existed partially outside normal reality and could drain the life force from anything they touched. But as the weapons reached the Horizon's Edge, something impossible happened. The human ship simply was not there anymore. It had not moved. Sensors showed no acceleration, no energy signature of FTL travel. It had just stopped existing in the same dimension as the attacking weapons. What kind of technology is that? The crystal being chimed in amazement. The answer came from Navigator Helen Barnes, her voice strained with concentration. Multidimensional navigation. We are not dodging your attacks. We are stepping sideways into folded space. The Horizon's Edge reappeared behind the Devourer fleet and opened fire. But their weapons were unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, they seemed to fire mathematics itself, equations that rewrote local reality and turned the bioship's own dimensional nature against them. How are you doing that? Voss demanded. The Devourers exist partially outside normal space, Dr. Park explained while coordinating the attack. That makes them hard to hit with conventional weapons, but if you can map their dimensional anchor points, you can target their real space connections. A Devourer bioship exploded in a burst of twisted light, its death scream echoing across multiple dimensions. Then another. The human ship danced through folded space like it was performing some elaborate ballet, appearing and disappearing faster than the bioships could track. This is impossible, Lord Krex breathed. No species has ever been able to match the Devourer's dimensional abilities. No species has ever tried thinking about dimensions the way humans do. Helen Barnes replied. Her consciousness was spread across multiple layers of reality, feeling her way through the dimensional maze by pure intuition. You all think too logically, but folded space is not logical. It is chaotic, organic, alive. You have to feel it, not calculate it. The battle raged across multiple dimensions as the Horizon's Edge faced down the entire Devourer fleet. The human ship would vanish from normal space, attack from impossible angles, then disappear again before the bioships could respond. It was like watching someone fight shadows with light itself. But the real shock came when the Devourers tried to retreat. The ancient predators, faced with an enemy that could match their dimensional abilities, attempted to flee into the deep void between dimensions where no normal ship could follow. Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication channel, calm and determined. "Oh no, you do not get to run away. Helen, can you track them?" "Already on it," Barnes replied. "They are heading for dimensional coordinates that—" "Captain, I think they are going home, back to wherever they have been sleeping for 50,000 years. Then we follow them part way and make sure they keep running." The horizon's edge vanished from normal space entirely, chasing the fleeing Devourers into dimensions that existed beyond normal reality. For several minutes, the Council fleet was left alone with the debris of destroyed bioships and the impossible knowledge of what they had just witnessed. When the human ship reappeared, Captain Morrison sounded tired but satisfied. "That should keep them running for a while. They know now that this galaxy has teeth." The communication channels erupted as every council member tried to speak at once. Questions, demands for explanations, and expressions of amazement all blended together into chaos. Finally, Admiral Voss managed to restore order. "Captain Morrison, what you have just accomplished should be impossible. How did humans develop technology that surpasses even the Devourer's abilities?" There was a long pause before Morrison answered. "Admiral, 3 months ago your council laughed at us. You said humans were too primitive to understand the nature of reality. But maybe that was exactly what we needed to be." Dr. Cross's voice joined the conversation from the horizon's edge. The secret was not being smarter than everyone else. It was being willing to think differently. While other species perfected logical thinking, humans kept the chaotic, creative parts of our minds that could see patterns where none should exist. "Controlled chaos," Helen Barnes added weakly. "That is what multidimensional navigation really is. Dancing with mathematics instead of calculating with it." The Council fleet found itself surrounding the small human ship, not as captors but as witnesses to the dawn of a new age. The galaxy's understanding of what was possible had just been turned upside down by a species they had dismissed as primitives, and in the distance, the scattered remains of Kepler Station drifted silent and dark, a reminder of the price that knowledge sometimes demands. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Every seat was filled, every eye focused on the small group of humans standing in the center of the vast chamber. Captain Morrison, Dr. Park, Commander Cole, and Navigator Barnes stood calmly under the weight of thousands of stares, their simple blue uniforms a stark contrast to the exotic forms around them. It had been 1 week since the battle at Kepler Station. 1 week since humans had done the impossible and driven away an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. The Council was still trying to understand what had happened. Council Leader Thyra spoke first, her voice carrying the weight of ages. "Captain Morrison, what your species accomplished has forced us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about reality itself. The Devourers had not been seen for 50,000 years. When they returned, our greatest minds could not even scratch their ships. Yet you destroyed over half their fleet and sent the rest running into deep space." Morrison nodded respectfully. "We were lucky, Council Leader. We happened to develop technology that could match their dimensional abilities." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Admiral Voss interjected. His massive tentacles curled with what might have been excitement. "We have analyzed the wreckage of the bioships you destroyed. The mathematics involved should be impossible. Your weapons somehow targeted their anchor points across multiple dimensions simultaneously." Dr. Park stepped forward. "The targeting system uses human intuition patterns translated into mathematical equations. We found that the chaotic way human minds process information can map dimensional relationships that pure logic cannot see." Lord Krex leaned forward in his towering seat. "Explain this to us. How can chaos be more effective than precise calculation?" Dr. Cross's voice came from the communication system as he joined the meeting from Earth. "Imagine you are in a maze, Lord Krex. Logic tells you to map every wall, calculate every angle, and find the most efficient path. But what if the maze is alive and changing while you map it? What if the walls exist in dimensions you cannot see? Then logic fails, the crystal being chimed softly. Exactly. But intuition, the ability to feel patterns and make leaps of understanding, can guide you through a changing maze. Humans never lost that ability because we never optimized our minds for pure efficiency. Navigator Barnes spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. When I guide our ship through folded space, I do not calculate our path. I feel it. The dimensions have currents and tides like an ocean. You can sense them if you stop trying to measure them. The tree-like delegate rustled its leaves in confusion. But how can feeling be more accurate than measurement? It is not more accurate, Barnes replied. It is more adaptive. When space itself is shifting and changing, precision becomes a disadvantage. You need to be able to change with it. Thyra's ancient voice carried a note of wonder. So while we perfected our ability to think in straight lines, you kept the ability to think in spirals and loops and impossible shapes. Something like that, Morrison agreed. The funny thing is, we almost lost this ability too. For centuries, human education tried to make people think more logically, more like computers, but some of us always stayed messy and creative and chaotic. Admiral Voss brought up a holographic display showing the battle at Kepler Station. Your ship moved through dimensions like it was dancing. Our computers cannot even model the paths you took. Because your computers think too cleanly, Bobby Martinez's voice joined from the horizon's edge. Our ship's navigation system is not really a computer. It is more like a musical instrument. Navigator Barnes plays it by feeling, not by reading sheet music. The hall erupted in excited discussions as delegates tried to understand this new way of thinking about reality. Some species were fascinated, others were confused, and a few seemed almost frightened by the implications. There is something else we must discuss, Thyra said, her voice cutting through the chatter. The Devourers will return eventually. When they do, they will be prepared for your dimensional weapons. The galaxy needs to be ready. We are prepared to share our technology, Morrison said. But there are conditions. The hall fell silent again. No primitive species had ever made demands of the Galactic Council before. Name your conditions, Thyra said. First, any species that wants to learn multidimensional navigation must prove they can use it responsibly. This technology is too dangerous to give to just anyone. Lord Crex's voice boomed across the hall. You would dare to judge us? We would dare to protect the galaxy, Dr. Park replied firmly. Multidimensional weapons can tear holes in reality itself. In the wrong hands, they could destroy entire star systems. Second, Morrison continued, humans want a permanent seat on the Galactic Council, not as junior members or observers, but as full partners with voting rights. Impossible, several delegates shouted at once. Third, Morrison said, ignoring the protests. We want to be designated as the galaxy's dimensional warfare specialists. When threats like the Devourers appear, human ships and crews will lead the response. Admiral Voss studied the humans with new respect. You are not just asking for membership, you are asking to become the galaxy's protectors. The galaxy protected itself for millions of years without humans, the crystal being chimed indignantly. And, yet when the Devourers returned, it was humans who saved you, Commander Cole pointed out. Maybe the galaxy needs species that think differently. Thyra was quiet for a long time, considering. When she finally spoke, her decision surprised everyone. The Galactic Council accepts all three conditions. The hall exploded in arguments and protests, but Thyra's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The age of pure logic has ended. The Devourers proved that. Our mathematical perfection made us helpless against an enemy that existed beyond calculation. She gestured toward the humans. These beings kept abilities we had forgotten, we needed. They remained chaotic in a universe that demands chaos. They stayed creative when we became rigid. They are not more advanced than us. They are differently advanced. What does this mean for the rest of us? Lord Crex asked. Dr. Cross answered from Earth. It means you have to relearn how to think like children, how to make wild guesses and impossible leaps. How to see patterns that should not exist and trust instincts that cannot be explained. We are prepared to teach these techniques, Dr. Nina Walsh added, but understand, this is not about learning new mathematics. This is about unlearning the idea that logic is always the answer. Over the following weeks, the first alien students arrived at Earth's dimensional research facility. They came expecting to learn advanced equations and precise calculations. Instead, they found themselves being taught human techniques for pattern recognition, creative thinking, and controlled chaos. The results were mixed. Some species adapted quickly, their flexible minds embracing new ways of thinking. Others struggled, their optimized brains unable to let go of pure logic long enough to feel the dimensional currents. But slowly, a new understanding began to spread through the galaxy. The universe was not a machine to be calculated. It was a living thing to be danced with. Reality had rhythms and melodies that could only be sensed by minds willing to embrace beautiful chaos. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge as it prepared for another patrol of the outer rim. The ship now carried not just human crew, but volunteers from a dozen species learning the art of multidimensional navigation. "Status report," Morrison called. "All systems ready," Dr. Park replied. "The new mixed crew is adapting well to our navigation techniques." Navigator Barnes, her consciousness already reaching out into folded space, smiled. "I can feel the dimensional currents, Captain. They are calm today. Beautiful and calm." "Then take us out," Morrison ordered. "The galaxy needs its guardians." The horizon's edge vanished into folded space, carrying its crew of dreamers and chaos dancers to watch over a galaxy that had finally learned that sometimes the most advanced solution was to think like a child playing in an impossible garden. Behind them, Earth spun in its ancient orbit, no longer the home of a primitive species but the birthplace of the galaxy's newest protectors. And in the deep void between dimensions, the scattered devourers nursed their wounds and planned their return, not knowing that the galaxy they had once terrorized was no longer the same. The age of pure logic was over. The age of beautiful chaos had begun.